some people get excited about, I don't know, socializing and all that type of stuff. I get excited about intestinal stem cells. Yeah.
So that's going to be our intro. Hi, welcome to another episode of That One Time Podcast, where we explore the pillars of health, wealth, and wisdom through conversations with interesting people living interesting lives. Today's episode is with a gut health expert and health practitioner named Dave O'Brien. Please bear with the episode at times. It does get pretty dense and very specific into health protocols and into gut-specific systems and challenges that at times did go over my head, but we do go full circle and we come back to some very, very key insights around health and general gut work. So if you're listening to it and you're thinking this is too much, feel free to skip ahead at some times. But if you are genuinely curious about gut health and improving your general health and well-being, this one is worth digging into some key terms, really digging into exploring what he's specifically talking about. Otherwise, enjoy it for an interesting conversation. Thanks for listening. And if you like this, please give it a subscribe, give it a like. It helps us so much as we continue to grow. Before we get into it, I'd like to chat about today's sponsor, VitaDrop. I've been using the VitaDrop sleep product for about a year now, and it absolutely blew me away the first time I used it. I looked at my sleep tracker and it had a 30% increase in my REM sleep. I'm somebody who spends a lot of time trying to optimize my sleep, and I'd never seen anything like that have a significant impact as it did. I remember messaging the co-founder, podcast guest, as well as a good friend of mine, Charlie, about it the next day, completely blown away. And then I've also shared this information with a number of people who have come back extremely surprised and very impressed with how much better they've slept once they've taken that sleep product. So they have 4 different products for 4 different day-to-day experiences, one of them being sleep, the next one being hydration, the third one being focus, and the fourth one being a collagen supplement. So if you're interested, use the code TOT in the description below to get 25% off your next order. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Adam. This is it's been a bit of a work in progress, but we eventually got there. Yeah.
Exactly. I like to be persistent. So it's part of my core values of never giving up, and eventually things work out. So thank you for coming on. And I just want to get a feel for where you're at the moment.
In terms of where I'm actually located?
Yeah,
we're actually located in Montenegro. I don't know if a lot of your listeners will actually know where Montenegro is. Yeah, okay, but it's in Europe and it's just south of Croatia. So like in the Balkan regions. So, but I'm originally from Melbourne. I think you know that. I was born in Melbourne. Believe it or not, I actually spent 10 years in the UK. So I have actually spent a reasonable amount of time in Europe. Like London, I actually spent 10 years in London, but I sort of travelled around Europe for to many different countries. Like whilst I was based in London. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but we're based in Montenegro at the moment. I love Europe, but I love Melbourne as well. It's obviously a big. It's had a big influence on my life. Okay, growing up there, and I had a pretty blessed childhood. And one of the reasons we sort of got away from Melbourne was, well, many reasons. I don't know if I want to bore you with like every single reason, but one reason was to diversify. We're looking at like getting like residencies and citizenships in like different countries around the world. Some people say like citizenship and having passports in other countries. It's almost like another commodity, basically. Yeah, okay, so and
interesting concept. I've never heard that before. Run me through what this means.
Look, I don't like getting like too political and all that type of stuff. But like Melbourne, I'm sure you know this. Melbourne was a crazy place. During COVID lockdowns and during COVID. Each to their own. Some people love the lockdowns. Great. Yeah. Okay. If you really loved it, okay, that's If you can keep it, you can keep it. Yeah. Okay. But I definitely didn't. Yeah. Okay. Like I had a holistic based gym, and maybe we might talk about that North Fitzroy on Queen's Parade in Melbourne, which I basically had for, like about 7.5 years. I'm no longer part. That was called Fifth Element Wellness. From my perspective, I would say it was like the first holistic-based gym in the world. Some people might want to push back on that and debate that, but I'm happy to have that conversation. But, when we first opened it, it was definitely the first holistic-based gym in the world. I didn't know any other facility around the world that was actually doing what we were doing around looking at, biomarkers and people's like biochemistry, looking at their gut health, when they came in. So, but, I'm getting sidetracked here. During COVID and during the lockdowns, well, essentially gyms, we were classified as a gym, even though, we were looking at a lot of different things. I didn't really like to classify ourselves as a gym. But, gyms were closed down in Melbourne for like 320 days. Yeah. So, close to a year. And we, at the time, I think we had about like 26 staff. So relatively, we're relatively big. And, during that time, I was pretty much the only one who was working. Because actually a lot of my clients were online. Because I was doing a lot of like, blood analysis. A lot of my business was generally online because I was dealing with people, overseas. And so it was an easy pivot for me, but, that was hard, like during the lockdowns, especially being the only one that was, bringing in revenue for the business. And really all I was trying to do was keep the business afloat, which I managed to do that over the course of the year. But I'm not going to lie, it almost borderline killed me. And I think I had a lot of time to sit back and just think, is this really what I want to do? Not me saying that I'm not proud of like everything that, Fifth Element stood for and what we created. It's like my first baby. I've got 2 children, but my first baby was really like Fifth Element.
But you like the second one more now. First one's going off the rails.
But it was like, Fifth Element was like my lab. I felt like the mad scientist, which maybe like, the curly hair and the beard. Maybe I do look a little bit like a mad scientist. And maybe people have heard me in other podcasts and, heard me talk before, they might think, he is a little bit of a mad scientist. But it was like my lab, so there's nothing, I regret about having Fifth Element for that 7.5 years. But maybe I just realized like, having like a bricks and mortar business, is that really what I want to do? What am I going to do from there? I'm just going to, create other, Fifth Element wellnesses in different places around, like, different places around Melbourne, maybe different places, around Australia, maybe go, overseas. But I definitely had the realization that, it was probably just going to spread me, too thin. Like initially what I tried to create and I would say it initially was relatively successful. It was the concept of creating a lot of mini-me's. And I invested so much into the education with the guys that we had there. I don't regret it at all. It probably didn't pan out the way we wanted it to, in terms of creating the mini-me's, but you learn a lot from the mistakes that you make. But ultimately it wasn't a mistake. I don't regret it at all. Because, the amount of education that I was doing with the guys, like for example, on a Wednesday, we would do like 3 hours, 1 hour of theory and then, 2 hours of like practical, like on the gym floor. And then at one stage I was, doing 1 hour mentoring sessions with like every single trainer in the gym.
It's a good thing to do.
It was huge. Like no other facility that I knew of at the time, was actually investing that amount of education, with their team. And it paid off, like we became really renowned, even I would say like worldwide. But with trainers, it gets to a point where, they're going to go, well, my glass is full. And where do I go from here? And ultimately, where they're probably going to go, is they want to create their own thing. And that's, I probably, like during COVID, I probably had that realization, which I'm quite grateful for that realization is that really what I want to do for the rest of my life? And maybe, stepping away from the business, and, pivoting and shifting things online, is going to give me the space that I require to do the things that I'm most passionate about. And the things that I'm most passionate about is like researching. I just like literally that's what I'll do. Yeah. Okay. If I'm not with a client, okay, I'm just reading research papers. Like, and literally people don't believe me. You know, I wish I had like a camera in the corner. Yeah. Okay. That's all I'm doing. Yeah. Okay. There's no word of lie. Okay. And yeah, it's given me the space to even, you know, create something that I always want to create, wanted to create, which is, you know, formulas and, you know, supplements, okay, that really will be quite, you know, revolutionary, okay, in terms of the approach. And, you know, I've got a business partner with that, yeah, okay, and I think we're going to create like, you know, supplements that people really they're not going to have seen them before. And so, you know, I felt like, you know, once I sort of stepped aside from Fifth Element, that, you know, maybe a fresh change, you know, and that's why, you know, moving across to Montenegro, okay. Once again, okay, there's more to it than that, okay. Yeah. But as I said, I didn't like the look. There was things during COVID that I experienced with Melbourne that I never thought I would see in my entire life.
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah. Okay, like I love Melbourne. Yeah, okay, like it's an amazing city. The people are amazing. Like I love Australians. Okay, like you know, I get some people and they go, you know, if you love Australia so much, why are you living in another country? Okay, I don't want anyone to think that because I moved away, I don't love my country. Okay, like I love my country. I love the people. I'm super proud to be Australian. I think Australians are some of the most innovative people actually in the world. But that doesn't mean I can't sit back and it doesn't break my heart that to see, okay, what actually happened to Australia during those couple of years. And then once again, okay, don't get me wrong, some people go, well, that was the right thing to do. And, you know, we're pretty proud of what Australia did. And you're entitled to that opinion as I'm entitled to my opinion to think that it wasn't the right approach. Okay. And there was a better way of dealing with it. And I would actually like to think that, you know, a lot of the things that I was preaching around that time, I have been vindicated on. Yeah. Okay. And really, okay, if you looked at the research, okay, ultimately I have been. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if people would dispute that, they haven't really looked at the literature. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, honestly, at that point with a lot of this stuff, it's got little to do with the truth and the reality, and it's got more to do with just like holding a position for the sake of holding a position. I've personally given up the attempt and I've just moved on with my life. But I understand fully what you're saying. But look, there's a lot in there that we can explore. But on a high level, I just want to get the listeners to understand.
Can I just say one thing on that? Yeah, okay. Like, you know me. I like to go on tangents and all that type of stuff. Yeah, okay. But there's a quote that I actually think is pretty relevant. Okay. And have you ever heard of what's her name? Ayn Rand. Have you ever heard of her before?
Yeah, Ayn Rand.
She wrote what was it? Atlas Shrugged. Yeah, okay, you probably heard of that. Yeah, okay, before. There's a quote. Yeah, okay, I don't know if you know. She was born in Russia, wasn't she? Yeah, okay, but there was a quote that I really like, and she said that the devotion to truth is the hallmark of morality. Okay, so there's no greater, nobler, more heroic form of devotion than the act of a man who assumes the responsibility of thinking. Okay, and I know it's pretty deep, yeah, okay, but I think that quote really resonates with me, especially during that period of time. Yeah, but anyway, I'm probably getting sidetracked. Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's true. I mean, all we have is our pursuit to truth at the end of the day, and that should be what we should be looking for, irrespective of ego and irrespective of what we may have thought was truth in the past. Like sometimes things change, and that's okay. But it's when people's whole identity gets tied into some specific narrative is when we get in trouble. And that's really what happened.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there. There's a lot there. I'm sure you know.
We can get into it, but let's just get it back on a higher level so the listeners can understand kind of who you are and why it's important that you have a great insight into a lot of elements like this. So like, who are you on an elevator pitch level, what are you wanting to contribute to the world, and what's your kind of core focus at the moment?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I feel like I've been asked that question, like if you had a bit of like a elevator pitch, yeah, okay, what would what would you sort of tell people that you actually do, yeah, okay? And it's a tricky one, yeah, okay, because like if you probably look at my background and you probably look at what I'm doing currently, you would most likely say, well, okay, he really practices functional medicine, yeah, okay, so it's naturopathy, it's more down that line, which is somewhat true. But, my original background is strength and conditioning coach. Okay. So it's also in the personal training realms. So it's sports science. Yeah. Okay. It's like human movement. So it's down that realms as well. There's a lot of things that I actually don't like about the functional medicine realms. So maybe, and there's a lot of things I actually don't like about the medical realms, but I'm not completely anti-modern medicine. There's a lot of amazing, I want to get this point across. There's a lot of amazing things about the medical realms. Like I'm not completely anti it. Okay. I guess, what I generally tell a lot of people, okay, like I sit somewhere in the middle. Okay. I guess people don't like nuance. They don't like that sort of gray where they go, well, make up your mind, where you sit more on the medical realms, you sit more on the, the functional medicine or naturopathy realms.
Makes them have to think for themselves.
Yeah, well, really, okay, like, let me give you an example, okay, like a lot of people in the functional medicine space don't like it when I say that there's a lot of similarities between naturopathy and functional medicine and modern medicine. Now, you could get into the weeds around the tools that they use, and yes, those tools are very, very different, okay, but the issue that I have is around the ideology. So what I mean by that, okay, is a lot of their ideologies can be very, very similar. So, especially when it comes, if I use the example of something like gut health, okay, the ideology that they have in naturopathy and functional medicine is weed, seed, feed. So what that basically means, okay, is that they'll find out that you've got bacterial complications, okay, and it's eradicate, get rid of it, okay. After you've eradicated it, which is like kill, basically, okay, then you're going to, so that would be the weed, okay, then you've got the seed, and the seed would be like probiotics, yeah, okay. So like replenishment, and after that, yeah, okay, it's like prebiotics, and it's going to be, certain types of prebiotic foods, okay. And that's the ideology, that's the methodology. Where if you look at like modern medicine, okay, when it comes to the gut, their approach is just eradication, okay. So basically what we're just going to use a nuclear bomb. The example of that would be like antibiotics. And so, a lot of the time I say like, functional medicine, they get on their high horse and they go, well, we don't agree with that approach. And I go, yeah, I get it. You don't agree with that approach. Okay. But you sort of have a very similar ideology, because basically what you're saying, okay, so yes, we can agree that a lot of the time when it comes to the gut, that modern medicine is using a nuclear bomb. They're just going to blow everything up and we're going to see what happens. Yeah. Okay.
It's the modern way.
Yeah. But, naturopathy and functional medicine think it's better. And I go, well, okay, instead of using a nuclear bomb, what you're using is a machine gun.
Yeah.
So there might be a little bit less collateral damage, but the ideology is very similar. So I'm probably not directly, answering your question, but I probably sit, somewhere in the middle. Yeah? And it is what I'm really trying to seek is I'm trying to find the answers for people.
However that may look.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like what is going to be the best course of action? Yeah. Okay. And that might mean that I look at some of the realms of modern medicine. That might mean that I look at, generally a lot of the realms of functional medicine. Okay. And then there might be an integration there. Sometimes there might not be. I think, a lot of the time we're working on like misconceptions and, and a lot of these things, like what I was talking about there, that approach. I mean, if the weed seed feed sort of approach or the eradication approach worked, okay, then we'd be seeing like if you're running a business, okay, you base it on KPIs, yeah. Well, I mean, if we look at it, okay, if that was like we were running a business, okay, well, okay, let's look at the KPIs. So if this is working that well, okay, well, let's look at like relapse statistics of things like fungal and So yeast and candida, like relapse, okay, or reoccurrence, things like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, negative gram-bacterial. Let's look at the relapse statistics because it's giving us some indication around, okay, is this approach working? Okay, well, let's look at it. Okay, well, generally, the reoccurrence of something like candida and yeast is about a 49% reoccurrence. Well, if you're running a business, would you say those KPIs are looking good or they're looking bad? Well, They're looking pretty bad. After doing any type of like SIBO protocol, and bear in mind, okay, the most common, course of action for dealing with SIBO is antibiotic therapy, okay, and generally like rifaximin and neomycin. Most of the time in a country like Australia, it's going to be like rifaximin. Well, straight after using rifaximin, there's about a 40% relapse. And 3 to 6 months after completing a SIBO protocol, there's a 66% relapse. And I couldn't even tell you, the relapse statistics for things like negative gram bacteria, more pathogenic strains of negative gram bacteria, may be even worse than that. Okay, so my point is, is whatever we're doing here, it's not working. It's not working, okay? And that ideology, okay, a lot of that ideology is what I was taught. Okay, so a lot of time I actually went against what I was taught because I just go, well, what I'm seeing here is like people are coming back to me, okay, and they just got like a reoccurrence and they just got a relapse of either, okay, of the same issues that they had previously, or they've just got new issues. And so once again, to answer your question, it's taken a while to answer this question, okay, but I would say, like my main specialty is probably looking at the gut, and that's probably the rabbit hole that I've gone down the furthest. But I look at, correlations and trends with like, biomarkers and blood markers. Okay. So, but I don't even like to use the terminology of like calling myself like a biohacker. Okay. Because am I a biohacker? Well, I guess some people might look at me and say, well, he's a biohacker. So I don't know. My elevator pitch might not be that great because I really don't know, what category I sort of like, fit in. Yeah. Okay. Because I'm really trying to come up with, better methodologies and better methods, okay, of dealing with these issues that are really, impacting and affecting so many individuals, unfortunately.
So just to recap that, you are focusing on the combinations of all different elements of health to fix people's problems when they come to you, but generally there's a initial focus on the gut.
I don't want to say the gut is the mecca of everything, okay, but it's relatively close, okay. If you look at it, okay, the gut is like the central hub of a lot of accesses in the human body, okay, where you've got like the enteric nervous system. That's the nervous system that exists between your gut and your brain. Okay, you've got the gut to skin axis, you've got the gut to liver axis, you've got the gut to kidney axis. You've got the bile acid to gut microbiome axis. You've got the gut to reproductive organ axis. Yeah, okay. Look, I can keep on going there. Okay?
Yeah, I understand.
Gut to lung axis. Okay, like it's endless. Yeah, okay. And so it's once again, okay. I'm not saying, and it's really important to understand that everyone has a bias. Yeah, and do I, most likely have a bias towards the gut? Of course I do. Okay, because that's actually where I've spent a huge amount of my time, okay, researching, and going down that rabbit hole. But I'm also conscious that I have that bias. I think a lot of people, they're not really conscious that they have this bias, and they literally, what they're selling to people is they're just saying, well, this is the only thing that you need to focus on, okay, and that's going to rectify all your issues. Some people say, well, the only thing that's important is energy balance. So it's really coming down to, like calories in, calories out. Okay. And me personally, energy balance is extremely important. So I do not discredit that at all. But to sit there and say that you're going to solve all your issues just by focusing on the amount of calories that you're consuming is just like you are just really, okay, you're limited to, that's your bias. That's probably what you know the most about, okay? And because you don't really know a lot about the microbiome and the gut and maybe like, aspects around the brain, okay, you just think it's really coming down to that one factor, okay? So
I was going to say, so how does people, for like the general population like myself that doesn't have the brain power or focus to get into so many of the different weeds and nuances, how do we get a good grasp of the basics when it's so complex and there's so much bias? Like, how do you navigate this space? Because it feels impossible at times and overwhelming.
Yeah, it is extremely hard. Yeah, okay. I don't dispute that. But let me bring up something that I think is like really relevant when it comes to something like gut health. Yeah, okay. Is that if we go back to that example that I was using around the approach of okay, we find out that you've got these bacterial complications. Okay. Well, the best approach is going to be to eradicate it and get rid of it. Okay. Well, I started to really question that. And it's not me saying that there's not a time and a place where that approach is going to have some merit and it might help to alleviate your symptoms. And it's, also it could make you feel a lot better. But I started to realize that, do we really think that the body, the human body, doesn't have these mechanisms or these natural defense mechanisms or these natural, rejuvenation or replenishment processes already in place? Well, of course it does. Yeah. Okay. And so could there be a strong argument to say what's really going wrong here is that these processes are breaking down on people. And so what I've really focused on, okay, is educating people on, what we need to do? We need to restore the things that are going to help to replenish and rejuvenate the gut lining. That's going to help with microbiome homeostasis. That's going to actually help with the natural defense mechanisms that are going to stop you from getting things like respiratory viruses like COVID. That are going to stop you from getting like candida and yeast overgrowth. They're going to stop you from getting SIBO, okay, like a gut motility issue, a gas exchange issue. Now, ultimately, I know that's where we have to get people back to. So most of the time, the approach is what? Well, you've got this issue, take this to alleviate that symptom, or take this to try and realign it. And you might realign it for a period of time, but is that really going to solve your problem long term?
So how would somebody that has health issues and is getting not much support and not much progress in the modern existing medical system navigate this? Like, where should they go next to you?
It's
because it happens a lot. Like it happens, I hear it all the time, and I'm sure you do it even more.
I mean, the thing is that there's so much noise as well. Okay, yeah. So I understand how, how confusing, okay, and how there's so much information that you have to sift through, yeah, and also people need to understand is that new information comes to the fore, yeah, okay, and things can evolve, things can change, yeah, okay. I mean, do you think that I, change my opinion on certain things? Of course I do, yeah, okay.
Especially You're not allowed to change your opinion ever.
Sorry?
You're not allowed to change your opinion ever.
Sometimes I think people like it, okay, when people stand firm with their opinions, okay, and they're not growing and they're not evolving, okay. But me personally, okay, you've got to be big enough, okay, to put up your hand and just say, well, you know what, okay, what I was actually preaching, okay, I don't actually agree with it. I don't actually agree with that now, okay, and actually, there's probably a better way of dealing with that. Look, the only advice I could actually give to people, okay, is that, look at people who've they've dedicated their life to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Not people who've taken bits of information from other people who've done the work. Yeah. Okay. Look at the people who've literally, they've sacrificed a huge amount of their life. Okay. To really understanding that. Yeah. Okay. And, I think it's quite easy for people to take shortcuts nowadays. Yeah. And it's quite easy for people to seem to portray themselves as the expert. That's not you've got to start from somewhere. So I don't want to make it sound like, okay, I'm having a go at people when they just first start out and maybe they don't know that thing back to front. Okay. But if people really, okay, they want to get the right information, what I'm saying is, okay, it's going to be the person, okay, who's dedicated their life, okay, to understanding that. They've gone down the rabbit hole. And guess what? Okay, it's probably not going to be the person that's actually invested a lot into understanding sales and social media. It's not me saying that those people, those things are not valuable. It's not me saying that at all. Yeah. Okay. But guess what? For example, I can only use myself as an example and other colleagues. Yeah. Okay. I know that those types of things, yes, they're important, but myself and then other people I know, okay, other colleagues, they'd rather invest that time into educating themselves or, I'm going to read this research paper. And I would generally say, okay, those people, yeah, okay, they're probably going to have more answers. Not me saying that they've got every single answer. Like I don't know everything. Far from it. Yeah, okay. I'm constantly trying to, evolve and I'm it's relentless. Yeah, okay. I'm never not educating myself, yeah? And so that's probably the only advice I could give to people. Yeah, it's like, look to people who've been in the trenches. Yeah, okay, and they've actually been in the trenches for a long period of time.
How would you find somebody like that on a very wide social media landscape these days? Like, what are some good? What I'd say 2 or 3 good points that you've noticed where you see somebody and you see the work they do and you go, oh, okay, this guy is clearly doing the work. This is someone I should pay some more attention to.
It can be a hard one as well. Yeah. Because information is so readily available now. Yeah. Like, you could say that someone could learn a script. Yeah. Okay. And they could just memorize that. Okay. They do a video. Okay. And, it could seem like they really know what they're talking about. Yeah. I mean, maybe the what we're using currently, yeah, podcasts, yeah, okay, are a great way, okay, of demonstrating how well someone, retains that information, how well they actually understand it. Yeah, I think it's actually probably one of the best forms where you can tell, yeah, okay, that person really knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, the time period cuts through the bullshit after a while. You can only fool people for so long until people realize you don't actually know what's going on.
Yeah. So, long format. Yeah. Okay. I know it's like we seem to be going the other way. Yeah. Okay. Where people want 5-second, 10-second clips. Yeah. Okay. But, long format, you get someone on a 2-hour podcast, 3-hour podcast. Yeah, okay. And they're talking about, the fine detail of, the epithelium or the mucosal cells. Yeah. Okay. Like you're going to get a pretty good understanding whether they've invested a huge amount of time into understanding that. Okay. And that's not just in relation to the gut. Yeah. Okay. And what I'm talking about, the epithelium, that's in relation to anything, you would say.
Mm-hmm. So going back on a higher level, and it might be challenging to kind of narrow it down. I'd love to, again, for the listeners to take some specific information that they might be able to begin to move in a positive direction in their lives if they don't know these things. Like, what are the fundamental principles of maintaining, say, a healthy gut as the basis of a healthy lifestyle? And if you were to not, be able to take a very specific, nuanced individual, but get a wide population base, what are those basic things that you would suggest to help them improve?
Are you talking about more from a lifestyle perspective?
Really? So like maybe what's great to eat. I know you've said what's great to eat, what to avoid, some key things that have very significant positive and negative impacts that at least you're starting down the journey.
Okay, there's a lot in that. All these questions, sure. There's a lot there. Okay, but
there is a lot there.
Okay, there's 2 major theories here. Yeah, okay. So one, a lot of people would listen to me talk. Yeah, okay, and they would say I'm a big terrain theory guy. Yeah, okay, and so what I really mean by terrain theory is really based on the structure. So this is really to do with the structure of the gut lining. Okay. I mean, the gut lining essentially is just connective tissue. Okay. It's predominantly type 1 collagen, type 3 collagen. Okay. What makes up type 1 collagen? Okay. Like amino acids, like hydroxyproline, proline. Okay. Glycine, arginine, glutamine. Also you need things like vitamin C. Vitamin C helps with the repair of collagen. You need things like manganese. You need zinc. You need copper. You need B6, okay, which is pyridoxine. Okay, the more bioavailable form would be P5P, pyridoxal 5-phosphate. Okay, so there's almost like this soup, that you need for like type 1 collagen. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can go pretty heavy here. Yeah. Okay.
Collagen soup.
Yeah. Okay. So there's like these key ingredients that you need for that, for that terrain, for that connective tissue. Yeah. Okay. Where I think what I was talking about, yeah, okay, that, you know, with sort of like medical and even like, you know, functional medicine, naturopathy. Okay. It's more about the virus. Yeah. Okay. It's more about the, you know, the beneficial, the opportunistic bacteria. It's more about like, what can we do? Okay. To deal with the virus, to deal with the opportunistic bacteria. Okay. Now, it's not me saying that doesn't have merit once again. Yeah. Okay. Like ultimately they're both important. Yeah. They're both important. Yeah. But I think one of them, we haven't put a huge amount of importance on it at all. Okay. And that would be more the terrain. So if I use some examples around this, there's a particular type of epithelium. Okay. They're called ISCs. They're called intestinal stem cells. So they're the major progenitor cell within the gut lining. Okay. So you've got progenitor cells, even within the tissue within your heart. Okay. So you've got cardiac progenitor cells. So what they're going to do is they're going to actually help to repair the damaged tissue within the heart. Okay. And you've even got like, you know, progenitor cells within your lungs. Okay. The major progenitor cell within the lungs being basil cells, and they're going to help to replenish and rejuvenate the other epithelium within the airways. Okay. And the major progenitor cell within the gut lining are called ISCs. They're called intestinal stem cells. Now, one intestinal stem cell will repair an entire patch of the epithelial lining within about 7 days. So what I'm talking about here is tissue homeostasis. It's the regenerative capacity of the gut lining. It's, you know, rapid renewal, basically. The intestinal stem cells or the progenitor cells, okay, within the gut lining, they're located towards the base of the intestinal crypt. If you might have heard of the villi before, okay? So if you've ever seen a cross-section of the small intestine, it's a little bit like a tube, okay? Mm-hmm. And imagine like the villi, okay, a little bit like a sea anemone, like tentacles, okay? And then you've got all these different types of epithelium that line the rim of the villi, okay? So the intestinal stem cells are located right at the base of the intestinal crypt, okay, down towards the bottom because they're protected there, okay? And, you know, intestinal stem cells, okay, are also to do with like neural stem cells. So what we're talking about here is communication of the gut to the brain. I already spoke about that, okay? That's to do with like the enteric nervous system. So the point that I'm going to get across here, okay, is that unfortunately there's a lot of things that damage intestinal stem cells. I'm not going to try and bore you to tears with every single thing that damages the intestinal stem cells, but if I give you some examples here, they actually did acute feeding and prolonged and chronic feeding of alcohol to mice. Okay, now a lot of people are going to jump up and they're going to go, "We're not mice." Okay, yes, I get it. Okay, hierarchy of research. Okay, you want more human trials. I acknowledge that. Okay? But they always have to start off with animal studies, okay, whether it's rats or mice or rabbits, okay, whatever that might be, okay. But it doesn't mean that research is not, it doesn't mean it's not valid at all, yeah. And especially when it comes to the gut, a lot of the time they have to start with like animal studies. And so they did this research, okay, where they did the acute and the prolonged and the chronic feeding of alcohol to mice, okay. Now the perception would be that prolonged and chronic feeding of alcohol is going to be a lot worse when it comes to damage than acute feeding, okay, and that might be true, okay, maybe if it came down to the liver or the brain, but it's not really true when it comes down to the gut. Okay, we do know that alcohol actually creates long-term damage to the gut lining. Now, that's not me telling people never drink again. My approach is I just want to educate people around this. Okay, the worst thing you could do is just put your head in the sand, just hope that nothing bad is going to happen. But when they did this, okay, it was actually shown, okay, the acute and the prolonged and the chronic feeding of alcohol with mice, it was actually shown to impede on, so it actually damaged intestinal stem cells. And not only did it damage the intestinal stem cells, but it actually impeded on their replacement process. So they didn't get replaced. Okay, and that replacement process is really dependent, okay, or the integrity of the intestinal stem cells is dependent on another epithelium that is very unique, which are Paneth cells. Okay. And I'm really beating the drum for things like intestinal stem cells and Paneth cells. Okay. And how much of this was really taught to me? None of it. Zero. So when I was talking about, you want to know what is the gut's natural replenishment and rejuvenation process. It's the intestinal stem cells. It's the progenitor cells within the gut lining. If you want to know the gut's natural defense mechanisms to stop you from getting candida and yeast, fungal infections, negative gram bacteria overgrowth, even your ability to deal with, protozoal parasites or parasitic infection, to prevent you from getting like SIBO. That is really coming down to the Paneth cells to prevent viral entry, stopping you from getting something like COVID. That's really coming down to the Paneth cells. And the Paneth cells, they actually help with a thing called the WNT protein, WNT pathway, which actually helps with the integrity of the intestinal stem cells. Okay. So what I'm talking about there, okay, and we also do know that ethanol and acetaldehyde, and you can get those things from candida and yeast and fungal as well, okay, but also alcohol exposure is really bad for the Paneth cells as well. So I'm just using the example of alcohol. I'm not saying like alcohol is the sole cause here, okay, but it's a contributor. They've also shown that exposure to high heat temperatures. Now, once again, okay, that's not me telling people don't go in the sun, okay, don't enjoy the weather, okay, but they've actually shown that higher heat temperatures created metabolic alterations with intestinal stem cells. Okay, consistent amounts of oxidative stress. Now, oxidative stress is not the devil. Okay, oxidative stress is when you have too many free radicals. Free radicals are completely normal, but you don't have enough antioxidants. And when I talk about antioxidants, I'm not talking about you having a green smoothie or a green juice or something like that. Yeah, some of the most powerful antioxidants in the body would be things like cholesterol, glutathione, the master antioxidant. Yeah, things like melatonin. It's one of the most powerful antioxidants, the kamikaze antioxidant, which basically means it like kills cancer cells, like kills itself. Yeah? Things like vitamin E, the only really true free radical scavenger of the body. Okay, vitamin C. These are the some of the most powerful antioxidants in the body. Okay, and so when you've got issues, okay, around cholesterol, and melatonin, glutathione, and vitamin E and vitamin C, you can't neutralize the free radicals. Okay. And when you have too many free radicals and not enough of these powerful antioxidants, okay, that leads to high amounts of oxidative stress. Okay. And so when you have persistent oxidative stress, that is not great around intestinal stem cells. And what could actually contribute to the high amounts of persistent oxidative stress? Well, that could be like chronic stress. That could be, and that includes like emotional trauma. It could be financial stress. Okay. It could be childhood trauma. It could be overtraining. And that's not me saying don't train. Okay. But you probably need to train smarter. Okay. Go for training methods, okay, where you're minimizing central fatigue. Yeah. Okay. It could be like mycotoxins, some of those.
Central fatigue. I've never heard that statement before.
We're just talking about like the impact on like, the central nervous system. Yeah. So okay. There's a lot of people, okay, when they're training, okay, they're going for training systems, okay, that are creating more central fatigue. Yeah. Okay. And that's impacting their ability to maximize what they're going to get out of the muscle fiber. Okay. And also, impacting their ability to perform better within their training. Okay. One of the worst things, okay, to contribute to something like, central fatigue, okay, would be things like low grade inflammation, acute inflammation, even things like dysbiosis. Inflammation post training, okay, is required. Okay. You need it for repair and recovery. Okay. Muscle growth. Okay. But inflammation before a workout, okay, is going to be detrimental, okay, to your performance. Yeah. Okay. We actually know they did research around like athletes. Yeah. Okay. Where they expose them to very high heat temperatures. Okay. Before training. Yeah. Okay. And those high heat temperatures decreased, because it obviously is going to create like, fatigue. I'm not saying is a bad thing. Okay. You could say it's like a defense mechanism for the body. Yeah. Okay. When they expose these athletes to high heat temperatures, okay, it actually decreased performance by 15%, which is actually quite big. So, but getting back to what I was talking about, okay, like, exposure to mycotoxins, okay, which would include things like DON, okay, that's called deoxynivalenol, okay, which you actually get from small grains being things like wheat and barley and oats and rye and corn, buckwheat, okay, obviously it could be mycotoxin free. But DON has actually been shown to raise up liver enzymes like AST and ALT. It's been shown to induce oxidative stress, okay, in the intestinal stem cells. So that and what I'm talking about there, okay, is that's just one mycotoxin. Okay, there's other mycotoxins as well. Yeah, you've got like aflatoxin B1. There's aflatoxins, okay, aflatoxins which you get from aflatoxin B1, okay, which you get from Aspergillus flavus, which basically, okay, you're getting from like a fungus, okay, and then the fungus releases the mycotoxin, okay, but you can get that from like, tree nuts, Yeah, and those tree nuts would be things like, walnuts and Brazil nuts and cashews and peanuts. I mean, what's probably happening now, okay, your listeners are going like, oh my God, what the hell can I eat? Yeah, okay.
That's right.
I just want to make it clear, okay, like even though, okay, like you can look at the literature with like something like aflatoxin B1, okay, which was actually shown to raise up liver enzymes like AST and ALT and ALP. So like urea, bung, creatinine, which is to do with like renal function, like kidney function, but also actually lowered things like red blood cell count, hemoglobin, white blood cell count. It's not me having a go at these foods. I just want to make that clear. Okay. It's generally what we've done to the foods that is an issue. Okay. So I don't want people to think like he's just saying Brazil nuts and walnuts are not good for it. It's not what I'm saying at all. Yeah. Okay. It's generally what we've done to the food. But even like, exposure to things like nanoparticles and microplastics, heavy metals. Yeah. Okay. Some of those heavy metals can be in your food as well. Yeah. Okay. If you look at something like rice, and I'm a big fan of rice, just to let you know. Yeah. Okay. But hence why it's going to be better to have organic, or maybe get it from certain areas around the world, like maybe like, Pakistan or India, where it's not, the quality is going to be better. Okay. But rice can be very, very high in arsenic. Okay. And it can also contain things like lead and cadmium. And if you've got bacterial issues, okay, you're going to have issues around biofilm. A biofilm is like a polysaccharide matrix. It's like a protective mucilage. It makes the bacteria anywhere between 10 to 1,000 times more antibiotic resistant. So it's a bacterial virulence factor. But that biofilm can be made up of these heavy metals like lead and cadmium in particular. I guess, my point is, okay, there's a lot of things that can actually contribute to this persistent oxidative stress. And so if you take other things like poor glutathione synthesis, okay, which once again, I'll be able to pick that up, okay, if someone, especially if they have like an elevation in a particular liver enzyme called GGT, which is gamma glutamyl transferase, okay, that can be a sign of a glutathione deficiency. So poor glutathione synthesis, that can also lead to a compromisation of intestinal stem cells as well. Aging. Okay, what are you going to do about that one? Yeah, okay. So as you age, yeah, okay, and they know this. Okay, they actually looked at the intestinal stem cells from older rats and mice. Okay, and they actually they compared that to the intestinal stem cells from younger rats and mice. Now, once again, I know we're not rats and mice. Okay? It's always the argument that's going to be used, but they actually showed that the intestinal stem cells from the older rats and mice, okay, produce considerably less tissue-like structure than the intestinal stem cells from the younger rats and mice. So I guess my point around that, okay, is that aging does not bode well for us either. So that's a lot of factors. And then if we look at like Paneth cells, okay, because they're really important as well. Paneth cells, okay, they help with AMPs. They're called antimicrobial peptides. And some of those key antimicrobial peptides are things like lysozyme, defensin, beta-defensin, secretory phospholipase, cryptidin. I know these are really like, complicated like words, but there's human A defensin alpha 6. Okay. I mean, like if you look at something like human A defensin alpha 6, okay, well, that actually prevents viral entry. So what does it actually stop you from getting? Well, something like COVID, like a respiratory virus. Okay. And so you can understand this. Okay. Even there's a thing called the PYY peptide or peptide YY. Okay. Which, a lot of people, they say it's a peptide. Okay. It's made up of like 36 amino acids. Yeah. Okay. But it's really like a hormone. Okay. But the role of the PYY peptide, okay, they actually showed that mice that were lacking the PYY peptide were more prone to like weight gain. So, but the big thing that I wanted to get across with the PYY peptide, okay, it's selectively antifungal, okay? So there's about 150 different strains of candida and yeast that we know of, okay? But you've got two major groups, okay? And the two major groups is candida and yeast is commensal. So what I mean by that, it's part of a normal ecology. So it's commensal in your sinus passages and your nasal secretions. It's commensal on the skin, okay? There's about 80 different strains on your skin, okay? So you've got the commensal forms of things like Candida albicans, which a lot of people just persecute, okay? But the commensal forms, okay, they actually help with aspects around your immune system, nutrient assimilation, nutrient absorption. So it's not like the devil. So ultimately what you're trying to do, okay, is you're trying to modulate and you're trying to regulate the ratios, okay, which is really going to come down to the PYY peptide or peptide YY and the Paneth cells. That's my point, yeah, okay? But what happens, okay, is the commensal forms of like Candida albicans and Candida strains can turn turn into their more virulent forms. And when they turn into their more virulent forms, that's when they're linked to things like systemic diseases. That includes things like cancer, okay, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, okay. And we know, okay, when you have a decrease in like AMPs, antimicrobial peptides, you get more bacterial translocation from the gut lining to other organs in the body. Okay. And that includes like the liver, that includes the pancreas. Okay. That's why there can be a link to compromised Paneth cells and acute pancreatitis. So what I'm talking about there is inflammation of the pancreas. Even like an overburdening the spleen. Okay. And for someone, okay, that could actually show up. I mean, within the lymphoid tissue within the spleen is actually where you produce like lymphocytes. Okay. This is really to do with your adaptive or your acquired or your secondary line of defense when it comes to your immune system. Yeah. Okay. And even like the spleen, okay, we're talking about it's a key component of your lymphatic system. Okay. So clearing waste in and out of the cells, but also dealing with old like red blood cells. Okay. But if you have more bacterial translocation, okay, from the gut, okay, to an area like the spleen, well, you can get like pain and discomfort, almost like abdominal pain, okay, on the upper left-hand side going towards the rib cage, okay, and then guess what? Sometimes it can actually shoot up into the left-hand shoulder or even around like the lower back as well, okay. And my point around that is how many people would associate having like a sore shoulder and a sore lower back, okay, is I've got issues with like Paneth cells and more bacterial translocation. Well, most people the high majority of people don't even know what Paneth cells are. Yeah, okay. And so you can have like defective Paneth cells. You can have compromised Paneth cells. You can have a loss of Paneth cells. Yeah, okay. So there can be a lot of compromised Paneth cells. Yeah, okay. So you can damage the Paneth cells. That's my point. Yeah, okay. And for example, okay, if you have like, and they've done research around this, if you have like deficient Paneth cells, yeah, okay. Once again, they did this testing. They actually created a scenario where they created Paneth cell deficient mice. Okay, and those Paneth cell deficient mice were more prone to Klebsiella pneumonia infection. Okay, now repeated Klebsiella pneumonia infection. So what we're talking about here is like negative gram-bacterial overgrowth. And we're talking about the complications around LPS, okay, which is like lipopolysaccharides, the outer membrane of like negative gram-bacterium. Now repeated Klebsiella pneumonia infection, okay, can be linked to ankylosing spondylitis. Okay, so that's an autoimmune condition. Okay, that's where you have sort of like a fusing of like like the vertebrae, the intervertebral disc. Okay, so you have like movement issues. I mean, I can give you so many examples here. Okay, and so how do we know? Okay, like if you've got damage to the Paneth cells, yeah. Okay, well, guess what? We know that antibiotics actually compromise Paneth cells. Okay, we know that even things like NSAIDs, okay, which are like anti-inflammatories. Okay, they actually compromise like Paneth cells. We know that people with like IBD conditions, I'm sure you've heard of that before, which is like irritable bowel disease or irritable bowel disorder. And that would be things like Crohn's and UC, ulcerative colitis and colitis. Okay, well, we basically know that people with like Crohn's disease, and you can have Crohn's in the ileum, you can have Crohn's in the colon, well, their Paneth cells don't work, which basically means what I'm talking about, their natural defense mechanisms, okay, are just not there. So what do you think is going to happen? Okay, and we even know that people with celiac disease, okay, which is obviously where you have like villi atrophy, you have cryptoplastia, so you have deterioration in the gut lining. Okay, most people are going to know it around like obviously having issues around the gliadin molecule and gluten. Yeah, okay, but you definitely have like severe damage to the gut lining because once again, okay, your Paneth cells are compromised. We even know that people on a typical Western diet, yeah, okay, and what would be a typical Western diet? Well, there's going to be a high amount of things like trans fats and hydrogenated fats and potentially seed oils and refined sugars and sugars. And this was actually based on 40% of the nutritional outline coming from that. That's not even that high. And this was based on like these individuals being on that for about 20 to 30 years. Now, individuals being on a typical Western diet for 20 to 30 years, okay, they had compromised Paneth cells. Now, what they tried to do to fix that is they put them onto a healthier nutritional outline. And unfortunately, just even now, you could probably debate what was the healthier nutritional outline. So we could definitely have that conversation. Yeah, okay. But just switching them to a healthy nutritional outline was not enough, okay, to rectify the compromisation of the Paneth cells. Okay, we know that we also know, sorry, just, one more thing. Okay, we also know that sleep deprivation, short sleep timeframes, okay, also compromises Paneth cells as well. Okay, and a lot of the same things that compromise the intestinal stem cells also compromise the Paneth cells, okay, like DON, so the deoxynivalenol. The things like aflatoxin, some of the things that I've already mentioned, okay, but definitely DON, okay, that's documented. And so my point, okay, is like how many of those things are applicable to most individuals? Pretty much all of them. So would it be safe to say that a lot of people have probably got a significant compromisation, okay, of, really integral components that actually helps you to deal with bacteria, okay, but also actually help with your natural replenishment process of the damaged tissue in the gut lining, okay? And so sometimes maybe just switching to a healthy nutritional outline, okay, is not going to be enough to rectify that. But there are certain compounds that can speed up the recovery, okay, without me going into too much depth, okay. We do know, for example, like Paneth cells, that there's certain types of bacterial strains that will actually help with the integrity and the recovery of like Paneth cells. Okay, one of them being like Lactobacillus plantarum. Does that mean you always have to take a probiotic? Okay, well, there's certain types of foods that help with Lactobacillus plantarum. Okay, so for example, okay, good quality dairy. Okay, I'm a big advocate of things like goats and sheep products, and even things like olives. Good quality olives, I would say. Okay, but you obviously get other things from olives as well. Yeah, okay, like oleic acid. Okay, but olives are really good for, Lactobacillus plantarum, and even other bacterial strains like Bacillus subtilis, Akkermansia mucinifila, and then Bifidobacterium longeum. Okay, and there's other compounds as well, like curcumin has actually been shown to increase like AMPs, antimicrobial peptides, and even a big one, an enzyme. Okay, but you can take it orally. Okay, you can have like oral administration, and that's lysozyme. Okay, ironically, okay, you actually secrete lysozyme from Paneth cells. And the lysozyme actually helps you to break down the bacterial cell wall and also to break down biofilm. Okay, so that is your natural defense mechanism to break down biofilm. But also lysozyme, and they actually showed this in oral administration of lysozyme, was actually shown to help to upregulate like the expression, okay, and restore the natural levels of lysozyme. Okay, so it's like a loop. There's other compounds, okay, that can be, really good around like intestinal stem cells. And some of those compounds, yes, they can be like peptides, like GHKCU, which is the copper peptide. There's another peptide called thymosin beta 4, which is like synthetic source of TB500. Anything that helps with mitophagy. Mitophagy is actually helps to protect intestinal stem cells from metabolic stress damage. And some of those compounds can be like spermidine, curcumin, astaxanthin, okay, but if we focus on food or astaxanthin, okay, you can get that from pink crustaceans, okay, and so that would be things like school prawns and prawns, maybe crab. Yes, you could say lobster and crayfish, but that's a relatively expensive habit. Even shrimp. So I don't want to make it sound like the answer is only going to come from supplementation. Yeah, but I will say that some of these compounds that I'm talking about, even there's a thing called NR, which is nicotinamide riboside. They've done research around that where they've given that to rats and mice, like older rats and mice, that actually restored the intestinal stem cells up to about 75% in the older rats and mice. That's huge. Okay. They actually gave them water, okay, that was infused with NR, nicotinamide riboside. Okay. So there's definitely certain compounds that can speed up, okay, like this recovery, and to also help with the gastrointestinal tract's natural defense mechanisms. Yeah. Okay. And the other thing, okay, is if we look at, there's a thing called GALT, okay, which is called gut-associated lymphoid tissue. That's where 70% of your entire immune system is located. Okay, there's a section of the gut lining called the mucosa. That's where you have the lamina propria gut-associated lymphoid tissue. Okay, if you actually stretched out GALT, it would actually stretch out for about 240 to 300 meters, the size of 10 tennis courts. It's huge. Yeah. Okay. And a lot of people go, well, what are some of the best things I could actually take for GALT? Well, amino acids. Okay, and so those amino acids like threonine, methionine, glutamate, glutamine, cysteine. Okay, well, where can you generally find a lot of these key amino acids? You can find them from like animal proteins. Okay, and that's why I'm such a big advocate of things like even like game meats, slow cooked meats. Yes, things like bone broth and bone marrow. The thing is, like, I could talk about this forever. Even things like radishes. Okay, I think they're one of the most overlooked and underrated plant matter compounds. Well, radishes in research, okay, were actually shown to help around like liver enzymes, like AST, ALT, and I think also LDH, okay, or lactate dehydrogenase. Yeah, and also actually helped to deal with excess amounts of bilirubin. Okay, now a lot of people with something like SIBO, they have an elevation in bilirubin. So you would say something like radishes, okay, are going to be really great around that. Even like carrots, okay, there's research on carrots. They're really good around oxidative stress, okay. They can even actually help with some aspects around like LPS, okay, to do with like negative gram bacteria. So I know it sounds all like really technical, yeah, okay, but
I mean, it is. I'm not super technical. The direction that we're going to explore all the different problems. There's so many problems in the world, so it's kind of like half the challenge. That the point that I was hoping to make to begin with is, that is just an overwhelming amount of like challenging problems that someone can have, and no one that isn't a complete expert in the situation in these elements will be able to do anything valuable with that information. So, what is there a way to work it back into something that there are like the basic 80-20s that allow people to just begin to move positively in the direction? Like, I've got no gluten, I've got avoiding corn, having adequate sleep, minimizing the scenarios where stem cells are destroyed, and minimizing alcohol. But then above, that's kind of the baseline. Well, is there any other baselines that you would consider?
Well, I think within that, yeah, okay, yes, there's a lot of technicalities, yeah, but there's also within the technicalities, there's a lot of simple advice as well. Okay, because what did I talk about? I said that, well, compromisation of Paneth cells was linked to sleep deprivation. Okay, like, so improve your sleep.
So what would an improved sleep look like from your experience?
Well, then that's a whole other conversation as well. Like, sleep's a big topic as well. Okay, and I've really changed the way that I even look at how to improve sleep. Maybe low hanging fruit, yeah, okay, is to avoid like blue light. Yeah. I would say it's more low hanging fruit, yeah, okay, not looking at your phone late at night. Yeah. Have your phone on airplane mode. Okay, these are simple things, yeah. But a lot of people that when they're looking at like, how do I improve sleep? What is the approach generally around that? Well, most of the time they're looking at just knocking themselves out. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to
not sleep. That's just
Well, they might look at like sleeping tablets, and then we know that sleeping tablets they can create issues around like melatonin. Yeah. So ultimately, you're just creating more issues. Or they might be using more natural compounds, but those natural compounds are really based on they're still based on, okay, you're going to take melatonin, okay, you're sort of taking the melatonin to knock you out. So I've even changed my approach around that, yeah, okay, because I used to thought, okay, yeah, the best approach is just to get them to sleep, okay, and maybe initially that is the best approach, okay. And when it comes to sleep, okay, you really want to look after not just melatonin, but also like GABA, which is gamma aminobutyric acid, okay, but also DHEA, yeah, okay, which is like your steroidal hormone, it's an anti-aging hormone, okay. So you can see how there starts to become a lot of technicalities with even something like sleep, yeah, okay. But the big approach that I've gone for, okay, to really actually help clients with something like sleep, okay, is actually improving, okay, a thing called myelin. Yeah, okay, I don't know if you've ever heard of myelin before. Okay, you got myelin, like myelin sheath. Okay, you understand cholesterol is really important for myelin sheath. Okay, so maybe it's not just solely about the cholesterol that you're synthesizing from the liver. Obviously, 70% of the cholesterol in the body is synthesized in the liver. Okay, but 30%'s got to come from dietary. Okay, but most of the time what we're doing is we're persecuting cholesterol. Okay, so a lot of people aren't eating a lot of dietary cholesterol, but you got myelin sheath in the brain. Okay, you got myelin sheath behind the optic nerves in the retina. Okay, and then you got myelin sheath in the spinal cord as well. Okay, an example of a demyelinating disease or demyelination would be something like MS, which is multiple sclerosis. I think a lot of people would have heard of that. Okay, but people don't know. Okay, that one of the worst things, okay, to actually damage myelin is inflammation. Okay, and do you know what one of the biggest contributors to inflammatory load is in the body? Bacterial complications, especially one of the ones that I talked about, like negative gram bacteria, LPS. Like LPS raises all these pro-inflammatory proteins, NF-kappa B, which switches on your genetic predisposition for autoimmune disease and cancer, interleukin 1, interleukin 6, TNF-alpha, IFMY, okay, TH17, interleukin 17. my big point there, okay, is that this massive rise in inflammation damages myelin. So what's the connection here with sleep? When it comes to they've actually shown, okay, that a primary deficit in myelin can lead to sleep and circadian rhythm disorders. So my big thing, Adam, yeah, okay, is a lot of time the human body, we have all these loops. And you know what? People, they're getting stuck in these loops. And what they might do is they focus on one of these elements within the loop, but they don't focus on the other one. And ultimately, that means, okay, they're not really going to be able to get out of the loop. The loop example that I'm giving here, okay, is that we know that if you've got like a primary deficit in the myelin, that can lead to circadian rhythm disorders and sleep disorders, okay? But then chronic sleep loss may negatively impact myelin. Do you see how that's a loop? Okay, and so people go, well, the answer, okay, is just to improve my sleep, okay? But if you don't do things to actually help to reduce inflammation in myelin sheath, okay, and to actually help with the myelin, okay, can you really rectify your sleep issues? Yeah, okay. So, yeah, unfortunately, okay, what I'm trying to educate people on, okay, is that it's all about these loops. Yeah, okay. And you have to close off the loops ultimately. Yeah.
Yeah. And are there ways to close off? So what would be, are there kind of again, I just want to distill down in an ideal goal here for the podcast. If someone's to listen to this and get to the end of it, they've got just a basic framework of how to take steps in a positive direction, doing very, very simple things. And then if they don't see improvement from there, it's then working with an expert like yourself on something more specific and dedicated. But I'm sure there's got to be some like basic supporting mechanisms around that allow people to do a bit better, day by day, that they can change now.
Well, once again, okay, like I do believe I actually have mentioned a lot of those things, just not directly, okay, but in a roundabout way, okay. Because as I said, okay, like yes, of course you can start with the low hanging fruit, okay,
it's and what's than nothing, right?
Yeah, I'm not discrediting that, okay, and that's like a great place to start. Yeah, okay, it's a great place to start. So yes, okay, if it's just not looking at your phone late at night, start there, okay. If it's like, you know what, I'm going to start with some slow cooked meats. Okay, great, start there. Yeah, okay. I'm not saying people they have to go down, like all these compounds that I'm talking about. I'm not saying they have to do that. Yeah, okay. So start with the low hanging fruit. Maybe some of these, like, these vegetables that I've talked about, that actually help with improvement in some of your biomarkers. Start with them.
Okay. So you've got carrots, you've got, what was the other one that you really liked?
I talked about radishes, maybe including like more fresh herbs and dry herbs. Yeah. I can tell people my gut-friendly salad, okay, is made up of radishes, organic olives. I talked about the olives actually helping like Lactobacillus plantarum, okay, and also some like sweet basil. Yeah, okay. Just having that with some olive oil, avocado oil. Yeah, okay. I'm not saying that's going to, at the same time, I'm not saying that's going to rectify all your gut issues. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a start. Okay. And the carrot salad as well. That's another one that I came across.
Yeah. Well, even like a carrot mash or something like that. Yeah. Okay. I'm really big on carrots. They've got beta carotene. Okay. Which, a beta carotene, phytonutrient, okay, carotenoid, yeah, okay, and that can really be good for like mitigating like inflammation, like things like interleukin 6, okay. A lot of people talk about the beta carotene in relation to provitamin A, okay, but not everyone makes that conversion. I just want to get that across. Some people can have the BCM01 gene. 45% of the population have that, where they can't convert the beta carotene into the provitamin A. So you're not really necessarily getting the benefits
from these things. Like, how do you find this stuff out? You just have to go down a rabbit hole of tests to get a feel for things.
Yeah, like you can do things like gene testing. I'm not saying everyone needs to do that. Yeah, okay. But my thing is that a lot of people look up and they go, "Oh, carrots are really high in vitamin A." Yeah, okay. Well, it depends. Okay, it's dependent on you converting the beta carotene into the provitamin A. Okay, but then some people don't make that conversion, which basically means that they need to get the vitamin A from active vitamin A. Yeah, okay, which means they need to get it from like animal proteins, animal fats. Like the thing is, like, you can think that you're getting something from a particular food, okay, but you might not be. That's my point. Yeah. So you can't always make that assumption. But, one of the things that I was mentioning, okay, but you still are going to get the benefits from the orange colored fruits and vegetables. You're still going to get benefits from having the beta carotene, because the beta carotene has got some anti-inflammatory benefits around things like interleukin 6. Okay, that's my point. Yeah, okay.
So hold on, just a little quick side note. Orange colored fruits and vegetables. Is there a specific thing there that helps with why did you specify orange colored?
Because it has the beta carotene. It has the phytonutrient, the carotenoid. Yeah, okay.
So carrots and oranges. What else is there in that?
Pumpkin. Yeah, okay.
Pumpkin. Okay. Yeah. Everything orange.
But the thing is, yeah, okay. Like I would say, because the advice that people are getting around nutrition, okay, at the moment, there's a lot of extremes. Yeah. Okay. The answer is carnivore. Yeah. Okay. Or the answer is you go plant-based. Okay. And my big thing, without going too far down that rabbit hole, is I would actually say that our gastrointestinal problems are forcing us into these extreme nutritional outlines. Okay. So, for example, if you've got fermentation issues, okay, you're struggling with high indigestible matter, high fermentable food that is going to sit there and ferment for a longer period of time. Okay. What are you going to feel better eating? You're going to feel better eating animal proteins and animal fats. Okay. So you go towards that, you feel better. And then what people think is they go, I found the answer. This is the answer. I feel better. Okay. But you're not really dealing. It's a Band-Aid solution. Yeah. Okay. You're not really dealing with the underlying problems and the real culprits to why you're struggling with that high fermentable food. Yeah. Okay. And you could say the same thing on the flip side. Yeah. Okay. If you've got something like Helicobacter and H. pylori, which is not the devil. Okay. It's parvonormacology, I would say. Okay. In the stomach lining. It's negative gram-bacteria, because I just hate the demonization around, certain bacterial strains. But, there's evidence to show that potentially ancient cultures had higher amounts of Helicobacter and H. pylori, maybe around 70%, and that might have dropped to about 6%. Okay, where they've even shown there could be a bit of a link to low levels of Helicobacter and H. pylori and multiple sclerosis. Yeah, okay, even a bit of a link in children. Okay, with things like respiratory problems like asthma, allergies, okay, like hay fever. Okay, so we should not demonize it. Does that make sense? Okay, but if you did have an overgrowth, okay, and probably the number one reason to probably why you got the overgrowth, okay, there's a lot in this, okay, but one of the major reasons would be that you had low stomach acid.
I had H. pylori for a while, and the solution was, the doctor.
Well, most of the time it's the triple therapy, okay, which is protein pump inhibitors, amoxicillin, clarithromycin.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Maybe, okay, if you're lucky, they might suggest bismuth subsalicylate, okay, if you're lucky, because at least it helps with gastric mucosa. Even when they did research around that, they actually showed that the clarithromycin and the amoxicillin, okay, when it was used in conjunction with bismuth subsalicylate, okay, that the bismuth subsalicylate enhanced the effectiveness of the clarithromycin and the amoxicillin. Okay, so my thing would be, okay, what's actually working there? Yeah, it's probably the bismuth subsalicylate. Yeah, okay, but my point is, okay, if someone had because once again, we need to get to the real reason why the person has the overgrowth. Yeah, okay. And once again, they could be stuck in a loop, okay, because that loop could be that they have something like SIBO, okay, which is bacterial overgrowth in the wrong location of the gastrointestinal tract, and that can be actually made up of beneficial flora, okay. But if you have something like SIBO, you can actually have histamine intolerance, because one of the byproducts from SIBO is histamine. Okay, so when people got these histamine issues, they're scratching their head to why they got the histamine issues. One of the biggest contributors to that would be SIBO and LPS and negative gram bacteria. We know that because you just have to look at the literature to understand that. Yeah. But SIBO, because you get histamine intolerance, okay, one of the most important things that you need for stomach acid, hydrochloric acid, gastric acid, is histamine. Histamine plays on the H2 receptors, which are histamine receptors. They're protein molecules, okay, on the parotid cells in the gastric pits in the stomach lining to actually help with the release of stomach acid, hydrochloric acid, intrinsic factor. So it's not, once again, okay, we tend to demonize all these things, not really understanding, okay, that, a lot of the time, okay, we're stuck in these loops, okay, so the SIBO creates the histamine intolerance, and then you've got the histamine intolerance, okay? And then you have low stomach acid, and because you've got the low stomach acid, which is your natural antimicrobial in the stomach lining, then you get the H. pylori overgrowth. Okay. And then what we do is we focus on the H. pylori and we focus on the Helicobacter overgrowth, but we don't really deal with the SIBO and the fermentation issues in the small intestine. So you see how a lot of the time, okay, people can get these relapses. Yeah. Okay. And so, does that make sense in terms of you've got to close off these loops? I know there's a lot of technicalities there.
There's just a lot of technicalities there. Like, I understand the concept. I understand getting to the root causes of a lot of things and then closing off the loops and then hopefully allowing your body to have its innate heal take place, like giving your body the tools to heal itself as opposed to like punching it in the face with different like nuclear bombs. Like, I understand that concept. It's just challenging to work through those elements unless you're really digging into the individual specifics. And I understand that the listeners would be stuck on a lot of those elements. So I'm trying to bring it back to like a high level of how do we address the basics, and then feed into talking to someone like yourself when it gets into more specifics.
Well, my big point is, yes, start with the low hanging fruit. But I guess the issue is, Adam, is people think that the low hanging fruit is going to solve all the issues. Okay. And that's where we're stuck at the moment. Does that make sense? Okay. Because people go, well, okay, if you got H. pylori, Helicobacter overgrowth, okay, well, you generally struggle with like protein synthesis, protein maldigestion, protein malabsorption. So guess what? You don't break down very well protein. Okay. So you might have a bit of an aversion to what? Animal protein. Okay. So maybe, you go, well, I feel a little bit better. Okay. When I'm eating a little bit more plant-based. Okay. But once again, does that mean that's the answer? Okay. It might give you some relief, maybe, and that's good initially, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. To give yourself some relief and maybe you reduce the inflammatory load. But my point is, it's not solving the problem long term. Yeah. Okay. And so, yes, start with the low hanging fruit. Yeah. Okay. Improve your sleep. Yeah. Okay. It might be easier said than done. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Because once again, people might be stuck in these loops. Okay. If they've got like all this inflammation coming from like bacterial overgrowth and they're only focusing on like, well, I'm just not going to look at like, blue light at night. Okay. There's probably going to be some improvements there. Yeah. But it might not fully improve the sleep to where the individual wants it to be. Okay. And so maybe to get it to the point, where your REM sleep and your non-REM sleep, I'm sure you've heard of those before, non-REM sleep is one of the most important forms of sleep, because we're talking about slow wave sleep. Okay. But if you really want to get them to where they should be, you're probably going to have to improve things like myelin and help with the myelin sheath, really to get it to that point. So, I guess like the reason I just don't throw out all these low hanging fruit solutions, because I don't want people to think, yes, start there. But you know what? There's a good chance there's going to be improvements. Okay. And that's a great place to start. But if you're finding, that, you've got these underlying conditions, for example, you might have asthma. Well, we do know that asthma, and they've done research around this. There's a link here with like LPS, what I was talking about with the outer membrane, like negative gram bacteria. They injected LPS in the peripheral tissue of humans, and they actually showed the more severe the LPS exposure, the more severe the respiratory distress was. Okay, so it even created like different phenotypes of asthma, like phenotype 1, phenotype 2. So what's my point around that? Okay, my point is, can you fix that if you don't address the negative gram bacteria issues and the LPS issues?
Yeah.
Probably not.
You have to get to the core of everything, right? You have to get to the core issues, and that comes down to...
And that gets a little bit more technical. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
I know your listeners probably want the magic bullet. Okay.
There is no magic bullet.
There is no magic bullet. Yeah. Okay. Like even with that, like histamine's a great example. Okay. Because people go, I've got all these histamine issues. Well, people don't know that one of the worst contributors to elevation like histamine levels is bacteria. It's negative gram bacteria in particular, SIBO. Okay. There's a particular negative gram bacteria strain called Pseudomonas aeruginosa. I'm not going to test you at the end of this, Adam. Yeah. Okay. But that was linked to like tinnitus. That was linked to tinnitus, like ringing in the ears. Okay. Respiratory problems like asthma. It's one of the most researched like negative gram bacteria strains. Now in research, they call it PA01. Okay, they did administration of that. It was actually shown to increase like neutrophil, which is to do with your white blood cells. Okay, your innate immune response. But it actually raised up histamine levels 6 times higher. It raised lung histamine levels 3 times higher in the mice. When they did administration of LPS coming from negative gram bacteria, it was actually shown to upregulate the expression of H1 receptors, the histamine receptors. And what did it create? Rashes and hives. Yeah. Okay. And
it seems to always come back to the gut in some form. Hey.
Yeah, I mean, like even a lot of the negative gram bacteria strains that make up, like, SIBO, okay, some of these strains like Pseudomonas and Morganella morgani, okay, I know they sound really technical, Citrobacter fructi complex, but a lot of these bacterial strains that I'm talking about, Klebsiella aerogenes, okay, which when they looked at samples of people with IBS, which is obviously irritable bowel syndrome, okay, when they looked at samples of people with IBS, 25% of the samples actually had Klebsiella aerogenes. What's my point around this, okay, is that these bacterial strains, they have high levels of histidine decarboxylase. That's an enzyme that converts dietary histidine into histamine. So there's just more histamine. Yeah, okay. And then with that, once again, it's like a loop.
Yeah.
We know that histamine can increase estrogen production. And then estrogen, it actually plays on H2 receptors and H3 receptors, they're histamine receptors, which actually causes a release and synthesis of histamine. You see how that's another loop, okay? And so people think, well, if I just take something to deal with I'm going to take antihistamine, which really plays on H2 receptors, really plays on H1 receptors, okay? Some people thought they played on H2 receptors. They really play on H1 receptors. So they're like mimickers, okay? They're not really dealing with the issue, okay? That I'm going to fix my problems. Okay. Or even we could go down, naturopathy and functional medicine. So then you're going to take compounds to stabilize mast cell activity, which are immune cells. So it's to do with histamine. So that might be quercetin, which I'm a huge fan of. Okay. Or it might be PEA, which is palmitoyl ethanolamide. Okay. Which you can use as a natural painkiller. Okay. So both of those compounds stabilize mast cell activity. Okay. But my point around that is they're only still mitigating the symptom. Okay, you're not fixing, once again, the root cause. Okay, and ultimately you're going to have to deal with either the SIBO or the negative gram bacterial overgrowth. Okay, like you might go, well, I've got estrogen issues, so I'm really going to try and deal with the estrogen. But are you really going to fix the estrogen issues if you don't fix the histamine issues? You see my point? Yeah.
So how would somebody check if they have, they've got asthma or they've got general tiredness after eating or whatever various high-level symptoms, and the doctor's saying your bloods are fine, everything's fine, it's all in your head. What's the next step there for somebody like that?
Well,
tell the doctor to fuck off.
once again, there's a lot in that, okay, because a lot of people
just on a high level, because people will get lost. People will inevitably get lost, and eventually they just give up, and they just give up.
Well, the thing is, people need to understand, okay, and this would be from very basic level, okay, is that if you go to the doctor, okay, and he's going to look at your biomarkers and your blood markers, okay, these medical or what they would call normal ranges, okay, they're really based on averages. Okay, so let me give you an example here. Okay, so let's say we take the first 100 people that get their bloods checked. Okay, and bear in mind, okay, they're not putting these individuals into categories. Okay, they're not putting them into age categories. They're not distinguishing the massive differences between sexes. There is differences, okay, whether people want to hear that or not. Yeah, okay. So they're not. So they're just taking these 100 people. Okay, which people get their bloods checked quite regularly. Okay, most of the time it's going to be the elderly, and after that it's going to be sick individuals. Okay, so more than not, they're comparing you to the elderly and unhealthy people. Okay, so they take those bloods. Okay, they average it out per the population that they're seeing, and they say that is normal for what we're seeing. Okay. But the reality is, okay, based on medical and normal ranges, okay, what they say is normal, you're still at risk of mortality issues. So what I mean by that is death. okay, and you're still at risk of certain diseases. Now, last time I checked, okay, the whole reason of having optimal ranges is so that you're not at risk of death in certain diseases. Okay, so the one thing that I would really love for your listeners to understand, okay, is just because you have been told, okay, that your bloods, okay, okay from a medical or what they would say normal range perspective, it doesn't mean they're optimal.
So what do they do with that information though? What's then the next step for them to actually make?
Well, you really, once again, okay, you really need to get someone to look at it, okay, who is looking at, okay, these, trends and correlations that are really going to be to pick up, a lot of these types of complications, that I've talked about. If I just give you one example, I want to try and make it as, simple as possible. Have you ever heard of like fistulas? Okay, in layman's terms, okay, so a lot of time if someone's got Crohn's, you've heard of Crohn's before, it's an IBD condition. Okay, I think most people have heard of Crohn's before, yeah, okay. But if they're looking, like a lot of people with Crohn's can have fistulas, okay, and fistulas is basically where you, in the most dumbed down, terminology possible, yeah, okay, is when you have like a leakage coming from like the stomach lining, okay, it could be like the duodenum, the top section of the small intestine, okay, to other areas of the body. And that could be like the skin, okay, so it could create like skin reactions. That makes sense, yeah, okay. So when they're trying to pick up like fistulas, okay, within bloods, okay, and you can find this in literature, okay, a lot of time there would be an elevation in a particular blood marker called ESR. It's called erythrocyte sedimentation rate, okay. Now, once again, okay, my optimal is going to be very different to like medical, but a lot of time if the ESR is elevated, okay, more than not in the medical realms, they're looking for like autoimmune conditions. So autoimmune antibodies, okay, so they're looking for things like lupus, it could be like rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis. So they're looking for the worst case scenario, okay? But if there's an elevation in ESR, that can be a sign of like mycobacterial. It could be fungal, okay? It could be a lot of co-infection, so multi-layered bacterial complications. But if there's an elevation in ESR and when there's a severe lowering in eosinophils, they're a type of white blood cell. Yeah. A lot of the time they call them like a pro-inflammatory white blood cell, but I don't really love that terminology. They really deal with like histamine. But if you have a real lowering in the eosinophils, okay, when they're rock bottom, you actually, there's a lot of eosinophils that are actually produced in a particular layer of the gut lining called the mucosa, but in a particular area called the lamina propria. Okay. So my point is that a lot of the trends and the correlations that I use, they actually do come from medical literature. Okay. And so if I'm picking up like there's an elevation in the ESR, there's a lowering in the eosinophils, okay, that could be an indication around fistulas. But if you've got something like fistulas, what have you got severe damage to? You've got severe damage to the gut lining. Okay. You've got severe damage to intestinal stem cells and Paneth cells, the things that we've talked about. Okay. This is me just giving you one example, by the way. Okay. Because obviously, talking about blood markers and biomarkers is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it's very specific in detail.
They've even shown, that, when it comes to like even low dose and high dose, like LPS, I talked about LPS, okay, that can even be linked to hyperlipidemia. So hyperlipidemia, okay, is when you have an elevation in lipid markers, total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, okay? So LDL cholesterol, what a lot of people don't understand, okay, is antimicrobial. It's a powerful antioxidant. And so one of its roles is to bind to LPS, to render the endotoxin non-toxic. Okay, so one of the reasons that you could have the elevation, the total cholesterol and the LDL cholesterol, they're actually shown with research that was done on elderly Koreans. I know we're not all elderly Koreans, okay, but they actually showed that H. pylori raised, H. pylori, Helicobacter overgrowth, actually raised lipoproteins and LDL cholesterol and LDL particle number 1, okay? But do you really think they're going to take that into consideration, okay? If they see the elevation, the LDL cholesterol and the total cholesterol, and I would almost guarantee you what they're going to say is that you are high risk of cardiovascular risk, heart disease, atherosclerosis, plaque, heart attack, stroke, and then they're going to give you statins.
Are these not relevant risks? I don't understand. Like, that's where I get confused with this whole cholesterol conversation.
Well, once again, there's a lot in that, okay? Because like there could be genetic factors, yeah, okay? There could be aspects around like hypothyroidism, or okay, there could be what I'm talking about, okay, where it could be negative gram-bacteria and LPS issues, yeah, okay. But my point, without going too far down, like, the cholesterol rabbit hole, yeah, okay, is that really, if I was looking for, issues around like, cardiovascular risk and atherosclerosis, okay, what I would be looking at, okay, is I would be looking at an elevation in fasting triglycerides, okay, which then, once again, they're generally not going to look at, okay. We know that people over, okay, like 1.0, higher risk of mortality issues. It's death, once again, yeah, okay? And so I would be looking at elevation in fasting triglycerides, yeah, okay? Elevation in things like CRP, which is C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory marker. Elevation in homocysteine, okay? A lowering in HDL cholesterol, which is high-density lipoprotein, okay? And even like an elevation in fasting glucose and fasting insulin. Now, what they're looking at in the medical realms a lot of the time is they're just looking at the elevation in total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol. And so the point that I'm putting across, okay, is there's other reasons to why that LDL cholesterol might be elevated. And it's not, a lot of the time, it's probably not going to be, okay, to do with, cardiovascular issues and atherosclerosis and all these things. So then once again, the individual is going on statins, okay, and then you're going to get all the side effects from the statins, okay, where actually your major issue is like LPS and like negative gram-bacteria issues. And you understand the statins are not going to do anything, okay, around the LPS and the negative gram-bacteria complications. That's my point. Yeah.
Okay. So it's a lot more complex, and work with an expert that has a better understanding of the holistic elements that interact with everything, because the existing medical system and majority of the existing medical practitioners don't actually address the interactions with a lot of things. They address very specific markers that are based on a wide population basis. It tends to focus on the elderly and the sick.
Yeah, and also, like, I'm not going to say that functional medicine naturopathy is much better from that realms. Yeah, okay?
Yeah,
because a lot of the time they can work on, they're working on a proposed function. Yeah, okay? So if I give you an example around this, what I was talking about with the eosinophils, yeah, okay? Eosinophils can be to do with multicellular parasites. Okay, so the perception is, like, people go, so the eosinophils are elevated, that would be a sign of like protozoa parasites, parasitic infection. So example of like a protozoa parasite would be something like Blastocystis hominis or Dentamid vagilis. Multicellular parasites, again, if you look at the literature, that's really to do with helminths. Now, helminths, yes, they're parasites, but they're worms. They're like roundworms, whipworms, okay, tapeworms, okay? So you could say even in the functional medicine naturopathy space, they're making assumptions, but if you go look at the literature, it's not backed up in the literature. Okay. And so the big point I would get across is you really want to go to people, okay, who have, yes, okay, gone, well, there's that proposed function. I wonder if I can actually support that and find that in the literature. And if you don't have people doing that, yeah, okay.
So how do you find someone like that? This is the thing. So I think that's the challenge I'm trying to find a solution for, is there's like the loop of find somebody, but then then there's this wide variety of information that makes no sense to 90% of the people. And it's like, but then you need to find someone. So how does someone break that loop and actually like get a clear bit of information? You go, okay, I don't get most of this, but I found someone that I think understands it, and they understand it because they are exhibiting A, B, and C in the way they operate and the way they communicate to that person. Does that make sense? I mean, that question makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. Look, I can't lay claim to be an expert in like helping people to like, I guess, like sift through all all the information. Okay. Because we talked about this right at the start. There's so much noise now.
Yeah.
I don't have an algorithm to enable people to dissect and analyze. Oh, is that really true? What that individual is saying?
So what do we do?
The big thing from my perspective, yeah, okay, And I know a lot of the stuff that I talk about is very technical and people don't resonate with it. And I get it. Okay. And people are always going to resonate more with when people just dumb it down in the most simplest terms. And it's not me saying that I disagree with that. And maybe, who knows, Adam? Yeah. Okay. I might come full circle. Yeah. Okay. Where I go, but at the moment, I'm still going down the rabbit hole. People want to know that. And I will continue to do that until I feel like I've really got like all the
other side of it.
Yeah, maybe I'll never come back up. Yeah, okay, okay, because people say that, they also say that someone really knows what they're talking about when they have the ability to dumb it down as well. Okay, and I don't disagree with that. Yeah, okay, and I'm constantly trying to come up with analogies, okay, that allow me to make it more simplified. Yeah? And some people can listen to some of those analogies that I've come up with. Yeah, there's sort of, my analogy is what we want to do is we want to heal the gut lining first. This is real basic level. Okay, so my approach, instead of this weed seed feed or just nuclear bomb, is heal, eradicate, or kill, heal. That was my ideology. Yeah. Okay. Now, some people are probably going to say, you didn't really come up with that. Okay. Well, who did? Okay. Because no one taught me that. No one taught me that. Yeah. Okay. That's me dumbing it down. Okay. I've got the forest analogy, like the gut being like an ecosystem. Yeah. Okay. And so the forest analogy is, imagine you've got a forest. Yeah. Okay. And someone comes along, they wipe out all the trees. Okay. And if we use the example of Australia, okay, if you wipe out all the trees, you're going to have grass. And what's going to come in? Kangaroos. Okay. We've got all these kangaroos. So we're scratching our head and we're saying we've got a bit of a problem here. Okay. Now, how we generally try to solve that problem, modern medicine come along. They're trying to solve that issue, and they go, well, just get a big nuclear bomb and blow up all the kangaroos. We blow up all the kangaroos, okay, and what's going to happen? Okay, well, eventually the grass is going to grow back and the kangaroos are going to come back as well. Yeah, okay. Then functional medicine, naturopathy come along and they go, well, that's not a great approach. And they're going to use the same ideology, okay? But what they're going to do is they're going to say, well, let's grab a machine gun and shoot all the kangaroos. Okay? And once we've shot all the kangaroos, okay, let's put the animals that would normally live in this environment, let's put them back in there, okay? But the issue is that we don't have an environment that they're going to flourish, okay? And so my thing is what do we want to do here? We want to plant more trees, yeah, okay? We want to restore this environment, and we need to have the structure to enable us to do that. What I was talking about with the Paneth cells, I know they're technical. And if people are frustrated with, some of the things that I'm saying, I'm frustrated, okay, that I was never taught this.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated, okay, that this has to come from me. Yeah. What I was talking about with the Paneth cells, yeah, okay, is that analogy, the forest analogy, okay, is that
that's a good analogy, by the way. I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot. If you restore to me,
yeah, I do have a lot of analogies. Okay, maybe you should just ask me to just look out all the analogies. Yeah, okay. But if people ask me how mechanisms work, I'm going to tell them how mechanisms work.
Yeah,
and a lot of the time they go, oh, it's so complicated. It is complicated, okay, but there definitely can be analogies, okay, to make it a little bit more. Excuse the pun, yeah, okay, digestible, yeah.
Well, I think that's a big thing. You go.
What I was going to say, if you restore the Paneth cells, yeah, okay, and some of these things that can help, I talked about, and some of those things included certain types of foods as well, okay. But the antimicrobial peptides that the Paneth cells secrete, guess what they help with? They help with microbiome homeostasis. What does that mean? That is regulation of your microbiome levels. This is a balance between the opportunistic bacteria, okay, or if we want to say the bad bacteria, and the beneficial flora, or the non-pathogenic bacteria, okay? So it's helping with the homeostasis, okay? How can we help with that homeostasis if we always think the answer is take a probiotic, take a prebiotic, okay? Just take this to wipe it out, okay? What I was talking about, where if you go Dr. Google and Wikipedia, okay, and you go, what's the body's natural defense mechanism to deal with candida and yeast? You know what's probably going to come up? Antifungals, or maybe, and it's not, I know it's not going to come up, but maybe natural antifungals. It's definitely not going to come up, but maybe people will talk about, but that, the best thing is going to be caprylic acid or monoleurin or grapefruit seed extract. Okay. These are natural antibiotics. But my pushback on that is do you really think that's the gastrointestinal tract's natural defense mechanism to keep those things in check? Do you think we were reliant on those types of compounds to regulate that? Of course you weren't. You were reliant on the Paneth cells and the PYY peptide or peptide YY. That's what you're reliant on to actually help with that modulation.
Okay, let me just come back for a second. Let me just come back into that specific thing for a second. So there's a number of challenges that we're facing. The basics are get the gut right. There's a number of different elements that can come from that, but at the core of it, supporting with experts like yourself, and your role in that is then to provide, I think maybe your role in that would be to provide like the Einstein quote I'm thinking of is make everything as simple as possible, but no simpler. So it's like maybe the approach is, instead of the mechanism of action to begin with, it's here's the concept, here's the high level concept, here's the analogy, and then once the person's bought into the concept and the analogy, then it's the specifics. So it's, if you go concept specifics, you lose them at a lot of the specifics because most people don't know 80% of the terms, and then they have to look up those terms, and that's a whole day's work in itself. So each new term from an individual kind of explanation leads down a new rabbit hole that individual can't do at that time. So they'll get stuck. But the analogy allows the individual to go, okay, I don't understand this, but I get the wide concept. And therefore now if I have a list of 10 things to look up and I'm curious about it, I can go down that path. So that would be my way of thinking, to try and both allow you to create a scenario where you're getting the specifics out while also training the audience's ability to digest the specifics.
And also the reality, okay, Adam, is what I'm trying to get people away from, okay, even though I'm saying there's certain compounds, okay, that are going to speed up, your ability to rejuvenate and replenish the gut lining, okay? I'm trying to get people away from okay, let me give you one example here, okay? Testosterone is a hot topic, okay? And then people think that the answer, okay, is that, well, the answer is take, Tomcat Ali. And I'm not taking away from that, okay? I'm definitely,
I love Tomcat Ali.
I'm far more of an advocate of it now, okay, than I once was, okay? Because once again, okay, I put up my hand and say, well, actually the research I've been looking at, okay, I think one of the major reasons Tomcat Ali is probably so beneficial, okay, is because of the benefits that it actually has around from a broad spectrum antimicrobial agent perspective. So it's probably from the antimicrobial, not so much the adaptogenic, okay, or the benefits around stress and all that sort of stuff. It's probably the benefits that it has around pathogenic strains of positive gram-bacteria and pathogenic strains of negative gram-bacteria and fungal, and even there's some documentation around Toxoplasma gondii, which is a protozoal parasite. But what I wanted to point out, okay, is, are we going to be reliant on those types of compounds to try and boost up our testosterone levels long term? Is that the answer? Okay. If you've, for example, okay, if you've got bacterial complications, so, coming back to the gut, okay, that we actually know the transmucosal migration of endotoxins. So we're talking about LPS, okay, resulting from damage to the so lipopolysaccharides, okay, which are fatty acid molecules, long chain carbohydrate molecules like polysaccharides, monosaccharides, the outer membrane of negative gram bacteria, that leads to lower testosterone levels by impacting its production in the testes. Okay, LPS induced inflammation, okay, actually creates cell death in the Leydig cells in your testicles. Okay, do you know that there's certain types of bacterial strains, okay, that actually help with testosterone? Like Megamonas, Rhinococcus, Acinetobacter, Doria, okay? But no one talks about that, yeah, okay? So when you say that trying to get some sort of microbiome homeostasis and regulation of the gut lining is going to have a real positive impact on testosterone levels, okay? Rather than, is the answer that I'm going to take Tomcat Ali or Fedosia aggressors, which actually I'm not a big fan of, yeah, okay? Because you've got to be careful of things like necrosis, okay, like death to body tissue and things like the liver and, even red blood cells in the kidneys. Okay, that's based on high dosages, bear in mind. Okay, but my point is, okay, are we really going to be reliant on these specialized compounds, and I'm not taking away from them, to really rectify our testosterone issues?
maybe it's a step in the right direction, right? Like my head
it's not me discrediting it. Yeah, okay. It's just that.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying what I'm saying is like it's a tool in a toolbox. In an ideal world, you're focusing on the absolute minimum things you possibly can outside of the basics to have high test levels, to have high energy, to have all those things. I think alongside working with, again, somebody like yourself to dig into the details, it's if somebody is completely fucked with like 100 like I can't remember the specific unit of measurements for testosterone in blood test, but let's say it's 100 or 200. It's like maybe using a Tonka Ali can kick it into gear to begin with to make this person not feel like complete shit. And then on top of working with somebody like yourself and then working on the other things, it's a positive loop that allows them to break whatever shit show of a cycle they've begun with. But it's not a long-term solution. The long-term solution is keeping it as simple as possible. Would you agree? Would you?
Yeah, well, once again, okay, I'm not taking away from any of those, those compounds. And with some clients, I use them. Yeah. So, just actually helping to like boost it up. Okay. That definitely can be like a positive approach. But what I'm talking about, okay, is obviously what we want to fix is we want to fix, the things, okay, that are actually causing long-term complications with that. Okay, so
this is a much more complex and very specific thing that needs to be worked through. I'm very conscious of time, and I've got a few more questions for you.
Go for it.
Are you is there anything emerging in like the gut health research that you're excited about? Something new that you've come across recently? You're like, wow, this is really interesting, and I am very surprised.
I mean, let me look. There's one thing. Look in the medical realms, they are looking. So when I talk about like IBD conditions, okay, obviously IBD conditions being like Crohn's and UC and ulcerative colitis, they are
irritable bowel disease.
Yeah. Irritable bowel disorder or irritable bowel disease, okay, whatever you want to call it, yeah, okay. But they are looking at doing transplants of intestinal stem cells, ISCs, I talked about then, okay, into the damaged tissue of IBD patients or individuals. Now, that's interesting. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to take or it's going to work, okay? But why I find that promising, okay, is for me, that is confirmation that really in the medical realms, they know what the major problem is.
That's
okay.
Good. So somewhere, we're starting to get a better feel for where the gut sits in this whole aspect of overall health.
Yeah, and even when it comes to like, why is it so hard to get rid of bacteria nowadays? Okay, well, we've created this problem. We're to blame, okay, with the misuse and the overuse of antibiotics, okay, and antibiotics being in food agriculture. And so, do you reckon bacteria is going to sit there and cop it? Of course they're not. Right? And so, we're dealing with bacterial valence factors. So they're molecules that allow the bacteria to colonize the host from a cellular level. You're the host whether you like it or not. Okay. And so a lot of these things I spoke about, like biofilm, LPS, molecular mimicry, molecular mimics, quorum sensing, saute, they allow the bacteria to evade and inhibit your immune response. Now they know ultimately in the medical realms that antibiotics just don't work as well. And where I'm slightly optimistic, is that they're trying to create things like, so quorum sensing, which a lot of negative gram-bacteria strains use this. It's a cell-to-cell communication that allows the bacteria to understand your cell density so they can adjust their gene expression accordingly. Okay. So we're talking about evade and inhibit. Does that make sense? Okay. So in the medical realms, they're trying to create pharmaceutical drugs that are quorum sensing inhibitors. Now, do I think that's the right approach? No, because it's probably going to create more antibiotic resistance and more antibiotic resistant bacterial infections. Okay. Because they're going to adapt. But you can go away. And what you can look at is we already know that there's natural compounds that are quorum sensing inhibitors, like quercetin. It's one of the best ones. Okay. Like allicin, aged garlic, berberine, NAC. So I'm hopeful that we're going to start to realize, you know what? Yes, we could use these things, but they're probably just going to create more of the same problem that we're dealing with. Okay. And we've got these other compounds that have all these other benefits, and we've got the literature sitting there, and we know they're effective. And I'm hopeful that we will make that pivot.
It'll just take another 15 years.
Well, that's why I refuse to treat adults like children. Okay. And a lot of people, they say to me all the time, they go, Dave, you know what? The information, you're talking about Paneth cells and you're talking about intestinal stem cells. It's too technical. People don't understand what that means. And I go, but one day I think people will. And if we continue to treat adults like children, ultimately they will act like children.
I like that. I think it's a very similar way of thinking about health and approaching this topic as Jack Kruse. I'm guessing you know Jack Kruse well.
Yeah, right? I know Jack Kruse. Yeah.
Like he says the same thing. He's like, you're not children. I'm not going to give you all the answers. I'm going to give you the answers within the space where you need to also figure it out for yourself. Well, I like that. On that note, I like the way we can end that part of the podcast. I've got a couple of rapid fires I want to talk to you about, just about you and the way you live, and then we'll call it a day. So, what is your ideal morning and evening routine looking like?
Well, I start work pretty early, okay, but look, I would love to start the day with a bit of cold immersion, ice therapy. I know you know I'm huge on that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Steve Nikolovsky and I are very good friends, and I went down an ice bath rabbit hole with him in Geelong during COVID period. Yeah, and he credits you to all of that, and that's when I began to follow you. That's how I actually began to come across your stuff. So, yeah, I love it. I agree.
Yeah. So, but look, I'd like to say I start my day that way. Okay. It's pretty early when I get up. Okay. I don't. Okay. But I always start with a cold shower, no matter what. Okay. And I do cold immersion. Okay. I actually do it more so in nature nowadays. I do really like the combination. Being in Montenegro, there's a waterfall around every corner. Yeah. Okay. They stay pretty cold as well. Okay. Even in summer. But I love, we know that the highest amount of negative ions, you've probably heard of that before, come from mountain waterfalls. Okay. You combine that with, they call them photon sides. Yeah. Okay. You get them from like pine trees and all that type of stuff. Combination of negative ions and photon sides. Okay. Actually helps with things like secretory IgA. It's an immunoglobulin antibody. Okay. Getting into nature. Okay. I would say it's almost one of the, the big reasons, okay, like even just being in Montenegro, the nature is amazing here. It's just at your doorstep all the time. I know you have that in Australia as well, okay, but sometimes you have to travel quite a long distance to experience that, okay, not here. Okay, literally we've got a waterfall at the back of our house, okay, we can just walk at the back, okay. So, nature exposure is a daily thing for me, okay. And, I meditate every single day. Okay, without fail, I'm more down the path of people like Dr. Joe Dispenza at metacognition, meditation. Okay, really big on gamma waves, which are really important for like learning capacity, ability to retain information. Maybe that's why I have a good capacity to do that.
Mate, you have a great capacity. I don't remember specific terms in any way, shape, or form. I remember very wide concepts, but you're very much impressive in the way that you can tie all of the very specific elements together.
Yeah, maybe it's sometimes a little bit too crazy in there, okay, but yeah. So metacognition, meditation. Look, I used to do a lot of like breathing, okay. Look, I'm probably going through a phase where I don't actually do a lot of like diaphragmatic breathing, okay, but I'm sure it will come back in, okay. Sometimes I have things in there for a period of time and then I might cycle them out. Yeah. Look, daily routines, okay, things that I would say are really, common, okay, and regular would be metacognition, meditation without fail, cold shower every single morning, cold therapy, cold immersion. I'm at least doing that about 4 times a week and getting in nature. They would be,
and then the evening?
Well, I actually do a lot of my metacognition meditation at night. I used to actually do it first in the morning, okay, but I think at the moment, presently, it works better for me to actually do that at night. And, it's really essential for me to spend a lot of time with my family and my kids. Yeah. Okay.
So connecting with the loved ones.
With my children. Okay. Like a quote that I really love. I don't know if you've heard of this quote before. Okay. I think it was by Clarence Buddington. Okay. Callan. Okay. And I really resonated with this. Yeah. My father didn't tell me how to live. Okay. He lived and he let me watch him do it. And that's what I really try to do with my children. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything if they don't see me do it. Okay. Maybe they might have, they might be scarred by the amount of cold therapy and cold immersion that I do, but they see me do it. I'm not saying that means they do it all the time. Actually, Brea, that's my little girl. She's 6. She loves it. Yeah. Harlan, that's my little boy. He's 3. He goes in and out. Yeah. But the thing is, even it doesn't bother me, even if they didn't do it. Okay. It's the fact that they see me do it. Okay. And those things, I know one day it will just come natural to them. I don't force it upon them. I don't have the expectation that they should be doing it. But, I really abide by that, that quote.
Yeah. Nice. And if you could only recommend one book for somebody to read for their whole lifetime, what would it be that would have the most impact on them?
One book.
Yeah. Maybe I'll give you 2.
I'm always, the thing is, Adam, I'm always going to have my bias here. Okay.
That's all right. It's fine. Yeah. You can have your bias. With your bias in mind, what is that book?
Well, I really love a book, okay, even that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, okay, like Your Blood Never Lies, okay, by Dr. James Laval, okay, because...
What's it about?
It's talking about, what your blood markers tell you, okay? Look, I wouldn't say that I abide by everything that Dr. James Laval is talking about in there, okay? I've veered away from, because a lot of time it's quite linear and very black and white, okay? But it can be a great starting point for a lot of people. And another book that had a huge impact on me, because I'm just talking about books that have had an impact on me. Okay?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to,
sure. Well, why doesn't my brain work? Okay, like the thing is, I'm all like I love to read books that are more around biochemistry and all that type of stuff. Yeah, okay. And that was a book by actually Dr. Dardis Karazi, and I really love that book because it's more talking about like neurochemicals and neurotransmitters. Maybe not directly, okay, like stuff that I talk about all the time, but the gut is very relevant to that, as you know. Yeah. But he uses case studies in that, and it might be a little bit old school now, that book, yeah, okay, but it had a huge impact on me. And another book. The only reason I'm going to mention this book because I went to read this book because I thought it was going to be all biochemical. And it was actually a book called The Trouble with Testosterone, okay, by, who is it, Robert Spikolsky or something like that. Yeah. And why I want to use this example, okay, because I thought this is going to be amazing. It's going to be all about the biochemical, processes around testosterone, all that type of stuff, okay. And actually, it had a huge spiritual element to it. Yeah. And it was more talking about the alpha male. And he sort of used examples around following a tribe of baboons. And the only reason I want to bring that one up, okay, is because I love that book. So I had an expectation of what I was going to get from that book. And actually what I actually got out of it, okay, was the polar opposite of what I thought I was going to get from it. Yeah, okay. And understanding that sort of, it was a pleasant surprise, okay. But understanding more that the alpha male and the spiritual aspect to it, okay, I just found it's good when you're sort of almost, you accidentally are forced to probably read something that maybe I probably wouldn't have read. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. I love that. I love those little surprises, especially in books. And that's the magic of it all. You never know what's going to happen. And you never know what one little sentence will just click something and it takes you down a different path. Last question for you is there anything you're excited about at the moment that you want to let the listeners in on? Just in your life, in your career, maybe in your research? Anything that's really curious and interesting and exciting for you?
Yeah, look, I think it's probably relevant to some of the things I mentioned, okay, which is the stuff that I was talking about, which obviously I get really excited about, okay, in terms of like the intestinal stem cells. I mean, some people get excited about, I don't know, socializing and all that type of stuff. I get excited about intestinal stem cells. Yeah.
So that's going to be our intro.
Okay. And I get excited about Paneth cells. Okay. Now, why am I excited about these things? I know they're not everyone's cup of tea, and I know most people couldn't care less about them. Why am I excited about these things? Because no one talks about them. And the fact that no one talks about them, I think we've missed a vital piece to how we can really support gut health long term. And we don't have to use these short-term like remedies, okay, to just try and eradicate something for a period of time. We're talking about, once again, the goal is what? The goal is to get the natural mechanisms within the body doing what they're meant to be doing, okay, which is ultimately protecting you from these pathogens, these microorganisms, these viruses. That's why I'm excited about that, okay, because if we can, sometimes it might come down to simple lifestyle factors, like I talked about. Improve your sleep, okay. Don't have these short sleep time frames. Okay? Don't eat a typical Western diet, okay. Yes, go for the low hanging fruit, and then on top of that, okay, there's certain compounds that, guess what, okay, you don't have to take so many supplements, okay, where it could be a particular compound that is more bang for your buck, and that's something I'm super excited about, okay? Maybe not a lot of other people would be, okay? Because I think we're getting to a point, okay, where we can go for things that are just going to have,
major impact.
A major impact. Yeah. Not this small impact, major impact.
And they're the things I like. The things I like as well. I agree with you completely. Yeah. It's all about getting those like 80-20 outcomes, right? And then if you can do 5 or 6 amazing 80-20 outcomes, you're spending your time efficiently and you're having a very wide impact on your life. And then you have the energy and effort and ability to do the small things. And eventually we're just robots.
And the thing is that, what I would say to people, Adam, okay, because a lot of people think we don't have the answers, okay? We're waiting for people to come up with the answers. The one thing I would say to people is I totally disagree. Okay, we already have the answers. We have the information. Okay. From my perspective, we already know what is going to improve gut health. We already know better agricultural systems. We
just don't know how to implement them at scale yet.
Well, there could be some blockages, okay, that are stopping us from implementing those things, okay. But I want people to leave this podcast in a positive frame of mind, okay, not going, what the hell is intestinal stem cells and Paneth cells, okay. But I want people to know, okay, that the information is there.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to correcting a lot of these serious health ailments and diseases, the information is there. Okay? We just have to sort of unlock it.
Yeah, well, that's there's just a lack of knowledge, not a lack of solutions. But look, and where can people find you if they're interested in exploring your work more?
I mean, I'm sure you probably provide a link to my website.
Yeah.
Also, you could just go to Instagram. I wouldn't say I love social media.
Handles, your handles and your website.
So my Instagram handle, okay, is dave.o.brian. Okay, so Brian is not BRIAN. Okay, it's EN. Okay, so that's my Instagram handle, and then my website, okay, is Dave O'Brien. Oh, I forgot my website. You might have to cut that bit out. Yeah, okay. It's what is it? Dave O'Brien at daveobrien.com. God, I forget it. Okay, I hardly quote it to people. That's why I forget it. Yeah,
it's at Dave. It's just daveobrien.com.au.
That's it.
Yeah. No worries. That's all good. I got you back. And the last question is, what do you think
when you don't say something a lot, then you forget it. Yeah.
That's okay. And what the last little easy one is, what do you think the why of all of this is? What's the meaning of life?
I mean, that's a big question. You ask some big questions. I mean, my big thing is that I'm just talking for me personally, okay? Because there's a lot in that, isn't there? Yeah. But I want to leave the world a better place than when I actually came into it, okay? And whatever that ripple is, okay, as small as that might be, if I can change the way we look at things around, whether that be gut health, whatever that might be, and that has a ripple on effect, and that leads to better outcomes for people overall, then I really believe the more people that do that, then, what we can achieve and what the world is going to look like I think it's going to be unbelievable.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy. I appreciate the deep dive. I'm going to listen back to this 3 or 4 times with a notepad and ChatGPT, and we'll see what we can come up to for round 2. Anyone else listening, give this a like, give this a subscribe. It really helps us a lot, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.